So let's say you're approaching this traffic light now, it's red, and a lot of drivers, what they'll do is they might just throw it into neutral like this and just keep braking. Can the gears make you fail your driving test? On this video, I'm going to show you the 5 ways that you can fail using your gears. I'm also going to show you how to avoid those mistakes. I'm also going to show you 5 ways that you think you're going to fail your driving test on your gears, but you actually won't. Let's get into it. The mistake that a lot of learners make is they'll forget to go into 1 before trying to move off again. So here I'm going to be turning left, so mirror, mirror, signal left. I'm going to slow down enough so I can check the right properly and the left as well. And there's a car in front of us too. So I'm going to wait here so I can check both sides. But then they'll forget that's in gear 2, and then they'll try to move off and then end up stalling halfway in the road. So you can avoid all this by remembering to go into first as you approach. That way, if you train yourself to go into first as you come to a stop, it just becomes part of your routine, and then that way you're less likely to forget to go into gear 1 before you try to move on again. So let me show you here what I mean. So I'm going to signal left, mirror, mirror, signal left, and then I'm coming to a stop because I can't really see the right properly or the left properly. So I'll get used to going into first. This way, you see I can keep moving as well. I didn't have to come to a full stop because I slowed down enough to check the right properly and it was clear. Then I could move without coming to a full stop. That's another benefit of going into first as you come into a stop. So one of the easiest mistakes to make with your gears is trying to move off in third. This is something that a lot of learners do, or they'll try to go for gear 1, but then end up in gear 3. They'll get themselves ready and then they'll try to move, but then when they do that, the car stalls, and then they're thinking, oh, why is it? It's in gear 1, it's not. They keep doing it, and then they do this, thinking that this is gonna help by shoving it a bit more, but it's still in third gear, and then they try again, and then by this stage, the examiner would probably tell you, mate, you're in gear 3, you need to be in gear 1. That's how you're gonna get a serious fault because the examiner has to help you. To avoid that, in the first place, when you're trying to go for gear 1, make sure you palm it like this. Have your hand in this position and push to the left and then up. This way, you can't really go into gear 3 like this. So if you push to the left as much as you can and then push up, it's always gonna go into gear 1. But if you just grab the gear stick like this and then push up, it's gonna be in 3. Another thing you can do is, if you've stalled and then you've realized, oh, something's wrong here with the gears maybe, don't just push it more forward. It's not gonna help anything because you're still in third gear. What you need to do then is take it out and put it into neutral and try again. That way, you know you're definitely in first gear. And then now when it's time for you to move, you can check around and move off smoothly in first without stalling. One mistake that's really easy to make is moving off in neutral, especially when you're going downhill. So let's say now you're ready to go, the examiner has told you to move on again, and you've forgotten to go into gear 1, you're thinking about your checks. They'll go like this, and then thinking that the car's moving because they're releasing the clutch, but it's actually moving because it's downhill and it's still in neutral. And then what will happen here is a lot of learners, once they get into the road and the car's not moving enough, they'll realize, and then they'll press the brake really hard, stop in the middle of the road and think about the gears. That's going to be an issue, especially if someone's coming from behind and coming quite fast. To avoid that mistake in the first place, it's really a good idea to make sure you have the biting point before you try to move. So like here, if I bring my clutch up now, I don't feel anything. There's no biting point because you're not going to get a biting point in neutral. So that's going to give me a warning that something's not quite right. If I go into gear 1 and then I bring my clutch up, then I can feel the biting point. Then I'll know, okay, I'm in gear now. So if something happens, then at least I'm in gear. I'm going to show you how to save yourself if you move off in neutral so that you don't fail the test, and also so that you don't create a dangerous situation for you and other people around you. So let's say now I've forgotten to go into gear 1. I'm thinking I'm in gear 1, ready to move. I'm checking my surroundings, checking around me. And then once I think it's safe, I start moving out like this. But then there's no power. I'm thinking, what's going on? Instead of slamming my brake right now, I'll go into first gear and then I'll keep the car moving, bringing the clutch up and adding some gas. That way, I'm not creating a dangerous situation by stopping suddenly in the middle of the road. I can keep the car moving smoothly. It's a good idea to gear down when you're approaching junctions and turns. Sometimes people do this way too early. So let's say I'm gonna turn right at junction here. If I go into 1 around now, this is a bit too early, I bring my clutch up, it's gonna slow the car down too much, and then the guy behind me could get really close because they're not expecting me to go that slowly. This is where you're gonna potentially end up getting a serious fault for gearing down way too soon. Instead of doing it that way, make sure you're doing the right speed for that gear. So I'm approaching this turn here. I'm gonna go left at the end of the road. I'm gonna check my center mirror, left mirror, signal left around here. So earlier I geared down around here. This is too early. I'm gonna slow down first, bring my clutch down around here. Then once my speed is going really slow, like around 10 miles per hour, then I'll go into first, and then I'll drive on. That way, it's nice and smooth. The car behind me didn't get any nasty shock, and I'm not gonna fail my test for doing it that way. One mistake that I've seen a learner do on the dual carriageway and failed their test was going into first gear by accident. So they were accelerating quite a lot, and then they were aiming for 3, but then they've shoved it into 1, and then lifted the clutch up like that, and the car slowed down way too much, and there was a van behind us, and they nearly crashed. To avoid that kind of mistake, don't grab the gear stick too hard and shove it into gear. Instead, do it nice and lightly without holding on to it. So with your open palm, once you're ready to go into third, push up and then push up again. So you see that I've done it in 2 moves. I didn't grab the gear stick and try to shove it into gear. I've done it in 2 separate moves. That way it's always going to go into third without fail. There are some things that people think you can fail for in your driving test, but you won't. One of them is, I've seen in the comments, somebody said, can't you fail for block changing? I can go straight from second to fourth, and this is not a problem. You're allowed to do this. Or I can go straight from 3 to 5th. This is also okay. So block changing is not something you can fail for, and is actually recommended for fuel consumption. Another question I get asked is, can you fail for approaching the traffic lights, let's say in neutral? So let's say you're approaching this traffic light now, it's red, and a lot of drivers, what they'll do is they might just throw it into neutral like this and just keep braking the whole time, and then they'll come to a stop in neutral. Now, I don't recommend you do it this way, but you're not going to fail the test for this. As long as the car's controlled, you won't fail the test. I also hear some people say that you need to have your car in neutral with your handbrake on when you're waiting at the traffic lights, otherwise you're going to fail the test. This is not true. You can have your car in gear, ready to go, especially if you're the first car. If you're not that experienced at driving, I'd recommend you do it this way. Be ready in gear 1, so there's less steps for you to do. You don't have to worry about going into gear once the lights change. You're ready in gear, so that when it goes to green now, you can just think about bringing the clutch up to the biting point and drive on. Less to think about, less stress, and you're more likely to pass your test easier that way. Now, this is something that I've talked about with an examiner before, and that is what happens if a learner stays in gear for too long. Let's say you're in second, and ideally you should be in third, but you just stay in second for too long. And their answer was, as long as the car's controlled, as long as the car's moving the way it's supposed to be moving, you're not going to fail the test for it. Ideally, you should be gearing up accordingly, depending on the speed you're doing. But if for some reason you forget to go into third, or you think you should be in second when you should be in third, you're not going to fail the test for it. But do enough lessons so that you know the difference between when you should be in second and when you should be in third and fourth, and so forth. Another one that I hear a lot is that going into first while the car's still moving will make you fail the test. This is incorrect. There are lots of examples when you need to go into first gear when the car's moving. A lot of cars, they can't do less than 10 miles an hour comfortably in second gear, so you'd have to go into first gear for that. And it makes it smoother as well. Having to come to a stop every single time that you want to change into first is not going to be a smooth drive. I'll give you an example. So like right now I'm in second. I may need to go into first at some point because there's lots of stationary traffic. Instead of stopping and then going into first, I might do it while I'm still moving. That way I can keep the traffic flowing as well. So like here, you see that now the car's struggling in second gear. Instead of coming to a stop first, I'll go into first, and then that way I can go slower than I was before in first gear. So this is another example when to go into first gear while the car's still moving. Just like this turn coming up here, if I tried to do this in second, the car's going to struggle, especially if someone was there waiting to come out of this road. So instead of going in second, I'll go into first, and then I can take it nice and slow. That way I can stick to my side and it's nicely controlled. If I tried to do that in second, there's no way that would have worked.